Okay, everybody, we're going to kick off this discussion with Charlie Kirk's memorial. It was all over the news yesterday. A lot of people still talking about it today. Almost 100,000 people attending the 5-hour service that went down in Glendale, Arizona. Some spent hours in line just to try to get in. And one of the most striking things was the different messaging from Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica, and then the U.S. president. Take a look.
That man, that young man, I forgive him.
I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erica.
So what do we make of this very different tones yesterday?
Oh, it was deeply unsettling, I will say. And actually, Erica was the only one who stood out with a really forgiving, peaceful message. I was listening to the New York Times podcast this morning, and first they interviewed people, just, fans, followers of Charlie Kirk who were standing outside. And when I was listening to some of them, I was like, am I in the upside down world? Because they were saying things like, quote, "It feels like they killed one of ours." And I'm like, wait a minute, as far as I know, there's one person who did this, and who is the they in this that we're insinuating? Another thing that someone said that they interviewed, he said, why is it always our side that's being attacked? And I was like, okay, wait a minute, are we trying to insinuate now that the right, if we're doing in dividing lines, that people who are right-wing ideologists, that they are the victims of all kinds of things, violence, persecution, all these things, and that the left is the cause of that? Is that what the message? Because there was a lot of repeating of that kind of, and that to me was just like, I always like to try to see things from the other side and try to imagine, but I was like, I can't get there. The data actually shows that right-wing extremist violence frequently, and it's way more frequent and way more deadly statistically. So how are we now trying to twist the data? And that's what kept coming up time and time again during this memorial. And I found it really unsettling.
It was like an instigation of war as opposed to a eulogizing someone's
Yes, yes.
Yeah, listen, I want to echo your sentiments. Erica, who was Charlie Kirk's widow, you could see her struggling. And they talk a lot about Charlie Kirk's Christianity. I was raised Catholic. I was raised with Christian values. She was one of the few that was actually showing them yesterday, if I can actually say that. Forgiveness is a tenet of Christianity. And in fact, I was really heartened to see that when she actually said, I forgive him, that people actually stood up. Because if you are a Christian, then that's what you should be standing for. I just imagine all the things that people were saying yesterday, and I was like, Jesus would never have talked like that. I don't know if y'all are just reading a different Bible. I think she was the unifier yesterday. That's what I would have expected from a memorial like that. And so when the commander-in-chief, who's supposed to be the president of everyone, is the one who continues to double down on the division, it is very scary, the turning point, quote unquote, that America seems to be facing, and we saw it yesterday.
I've just watching her stand up there and talk about her husband was really hard to watch, and you're right, she was the only one who seemed to give that message of forgiveness, and as a Christian, that is what we're taught. But it's not just, even if you're not a Christian, even psychologists say, the forgiveness is not for the other person, it is for you. And let us not forget that this woman still has to raise 2 babies who are 1 and 3 by herself without her husband. So she has a long road ahead of her, and she needs to get herself together and feel like a whole person in order to do that. But it was very interesting that there were many different voices, which to me says one thing, that they were not there for the right reasons. Everyone was there to push their agenda. And at the very top of that list is President Donald Trump. And when I was listening to what he was saying and the way he was leaning on the podium, and it was almost like you forgot for a second that this was actually supposed to be eulogizing someone.
It was like a rally.
My first thought,
exactly.
My first thought was, how bad are those Epstein files? Because anytime you have a chance to distract people, you don't miss a moment, even at the expense of someone's life. You are making sure you're like, yeah, I don't like them. I hate. And it's like, what is in those files? How many pages are you on? That was my first lasting thought when I saw him up there.
Wow.
Yeah.
I found it, there was a lot of religious rhetoric, and it wasn't exactly comforting. It sort of felt like less like a rally, almost like a call to crusade. And historically, I'm sure you guys can remember, well, we weren't alive, but a lot of crusades didn't actually turn out so great, and that they were sort of couched in that language of faith. But just as important as spreading that faith was getting more land, oppressing more people, getting money, gaining power. And it felt like that was sort of the undercurrent of, or maybe the beginnings of that, and it was couched in the language of piety. I kept thinking, like, my God, Thomas Jefferson's probably turning in his grave, you know, thinking about that First Amendment, like the separation of church and state. And you just saw all the statesmen, and they were mostly men. There were some stateswomen as well. And you're like, they're all speaking like a crusader.
Yeah, like one of the lines actually in there was, you know, they were pulling from the Bible, and they were saying, wielding the sword in a godly mission against evil. They were asking people to wield the sword in a godly mission against evil.
You know what? I can't get over this. No. Because I'll tell you, okay, this is where I'm gonna go on a rant. While everybody is busy, it's okay, it's my job. It's my job. It's okay, it's my job. Yeah, it's my job. While everybody is busy going, it's the left, it's the right, it's the left, it's the right, you cannot fix a problem if you do not adequately identify what that problem is. While everyone's saying left and right, here's what we do have the statistics to show. First of all, it is mostly right-leaning young men who are doing these mass shootings. But if you take a look at the history of mass shootings in the United States of America, they are 98% young men between the ages of 20 and 30, period. If women were doing mass shootings every day in America and walking into schools with AR-17s, whatever the number is of those guns, and shooting up schools, people would say, there is a crisis among women. Why are the left and the right not actually targeting and identifying the problem? Something is broken in America. It's not left, it's not right alone. It is young, largely white men between the ages of 20 and 30 who are completely self-radicalizing. Until Trump says that, until every person says that, it doesn't matter.
And that's the thing, actually, Charlie Kirk, some would say, was actually trying to illuminate that point. He was actually, right? He was trying to talk to, he was concerned about young men being radicalized, but then you have Trump coming in and actually furthering that divide and furthering that rhetoric.
Sorry, but historically, isn't that what the United States has always done? Whenever, look at the way they talk about and treat people who are enslaved. They don't want to talk about it. They want to get rid of all the things that bring up those issues and those facts in museums right now. It's like, oh, we did this, but we don't want to talk about that. That was a long time ago. They historically have been horrible about facing their own evil and the horrible things that they've done.
And they certainly never want to look at gun control. That never is the problem. Never look at gun control.
Because they're never going to change that. Absolutely.
Hey, you, come a bit closer. We've got so many more must-see interviews, spicy debates, lifestyle tips, and pop culture moments. So subscribe to our channel by tapping the logo below and don't miss out.